Joining me now, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Secretary Pompeo, an honor to have you here. You're the perfect guest to speak to this. I want to pull up a list of ISIS-inspired attacks to put into perspective just how big of an attack this was. And as you can see at the top was Pulse nightclub. That was the deadliest ISIS attack. It left 49 dead. Then you go to New Orleans, which is tied with San Bernardino at 14 dead. We know at its height, ISIS was controlling a territory the size of Britain, about a third of Syria, about 40% of Iraq, and then you came in with President Trump, and ISIS was decimated. What do you assess and estimate the strength of ISIS is today after 4 years of this President Biden?
Okay, good evening. Sadly, we're right back in the soup again, precisely where we were in January 2017, just as you referred to, with ISIS roaming free, cutting the heads off civilians on the beaches. We all remember those videos. And the acts in New Orleans remind us all this evil still roams. And when America fails to lead, when you don't engage in solid law enforcement and enforcing criminal laws, when you can't secure your borders, when you refuse to call out radical Islamic terrorism and punish it, you get the events of October 7th. You get the events of just this past week in New Orleans. You get a resurgence of ISIS. You get Al-Qaeda back growing again after what happened in Afghanistan. This is a set of failed policies that lead directly to increased risks all across America, in our cities and all across this country.
I was reviewing some of your speeches today, and I was really intrigued by an anecdote that I came across. It was from a speech you gave in 2019, and I want to pull this up and have you retell it for our viewers. As we all think about January 20th, President Trump coming back in, something happened on his inauguration day in 2016. He went out to the Central Intelligence Agency headquarters, you said, the very first day, less than 24 hours after he was inaugurated, and he pledged his support for whatever the agency needed to take out Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and the entire caliphate. So day one, President Trump came to the CIA and said, let's get ISIS?
He inaugurated at noon on a Friday, and 10 o'clock the next morning, he was out at Langley, speaking directly to the officers at the agency and telling them, you have the resources you need. Let Director Pompeo know, and I'll make sure you have them, and we're going to go crush these bad guys. And we saw that, whether it was the strike we took against Qasem Soleimani to push back against the Iranians, or to your point about Baghdadi, we were serious about making clear that there would be real costs for those who committed terror against the American people or risked our lives. And that morning, that Saturday morning, set the course, frankly, for the entire 4 years, where we were directed by him and then given the power and the freedom to go execute a series of plans that delivered the very security that we lack today. What we saw as a result just these last 48 hours, I feel so badly for these families who lost their loved ones.
I do too. And I hope that anecdote takes place again in just a few days. It's really intriguing to hear that. You know, do you fear that ISIS is in the country now? Because when we look, there was that attack in Moscow that left 137 dead. They had planned an election day attack. There were individuals from Tajikistan connected to ISIS, 8 of which entered our country. Do you think ISIS is walking among us?
Kaylee, you need only listen to what Director Wray said at the FBI a few weeks back, right? He said, all the lights are flashing. I fear precisely what we saw play out. We've also seen a couple of hundred folks that are on the terror watch list come across our southern border. We don't have any earthly idea where many of these folks are. Yes, I fear not only are there folks who are members of ISIS or inspired by ISIS, as we saw, but there are planners, there are plans, there are people who might well be activated. This is the task that President Trump and his team will face. They need to go find them all, take down these networks, do the solid intelligence collection, right? This is hard work, collecting chatter from abroad and things that are taking place inside the country. It is granular grunt work that's got to be done and executed by the federal officials, by local and state sheriffs and police forces, but it needs to be led by the United States of America from the top. And sadly, this administration has failed to do that in ways that I fear will come back to continue to haunt us for months and months and months, Kaylee.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, thank you as always.